Just go plant peas along where the corn is planted, let the peas climb on the corn stalks, and you really don't have to spend any money on a trellis. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a wonderful day. It is Saturday, August 24th here in South Georgia, and on today's video we're going to be doing a little work on these cowpeas behind me here, these 3 heirloom varieties that we planted a few weeks ago. Going to talk about whether we should thin these or not, because they are planted really thick. And for these climbing cowpea varieties, do we really need a trellis on those, or could we just let them crawl on the ground? But first, since we're over here, let's check on this McCormick's Blue Giant corn behind me, see if we've got any respectable ears on there after Debbie kind of came through and did her thing a few weeks ago. So if you've been keeping pace with our videos, you know we had some beautiful, really tall heirloom giant blue field corn here until Hurricane Debbie or Tropical Storm Debbie came along and blew a lot of it down. You can see some of it did stand back up, some of it didn't. Now when Debbie came through and did her thing, I think we were kind of on the tail end of the pollination stage, so getting blown over at that stage could affect or could have affected our pollination a little bit. Another thing about this variety that I've noticed growing it just 2 times, it's not real consistent. As bad as I want it to be consistent, it's not super consistent. But let's look at a few ears and see what we've got. So this McCormick's Blue Giant has some Hickory King genes in it, which means it should make some really big ears of field corn. There's a pretty good sized one there, but they're not all that big. Look at that one there, it looks kind of pitiful, and that one there pretty much looks like an ear of sweet corn. Now with this field corn, we really don't want to harvest it at this stage. We're going to wait until those plants dry up completely and these ears of corn dry up completely. They go from standing upright like this to falling over basically upside down on the stalk. But I went ahead and grabbed these 2 just so you could see what they look like. Let's open this one up here. I knew we were going to have some worms on this stuff here. That one there didn't get pollinated well at all. You can see only about half of it got pollinated. The corn that's on there is absolutely beautiful. Got some nice big kernels there, just didn't get pollinated at the tip. And then if we look at this bigger ear here, got some more worm damage on it, but actually pretty decent pollination on this ear there. The worms eat off a little bit of the tip there, but they won't do as much damage now that this is starting to dry out a little bit. Now this isn't what I would call a giant ear of field corn by any means, pretty average size, but the color on it is beautiful and looks like we're not going to get skunked on this year. Debbie did some damage there, but I believe we'll be able to salvage enough to grind some of this into grits and give it a try. Now let's get back on track and talk about these cowpeas that we planted, seems like just a few weeks ago. Man, these things all germinated really well for us, and they have been growing super fast. I did have to cut a couple of those corn stalks that fell into my cowpeas after the tropical storm. Got those out of the way so I could keep things nice and clean. But we have our 3 varieties out here. We've got the Chack Bay right there, we've got the Ozark Razorback right there, and then the Tennessee purple peas right there. And if you saw that video when we planted these, we did not put down any pre-plant fertilizer for these peas here, because I felt like I still probably had a decent amount of nutrients in this soil from having sweet corn here before we planted these peas. So our plants are really nice, dark green, healthy looking. We are getting a little bit of pest pressure on the leaves, which is expected out here this time of year, but it's not bad. Just a few holes in the leaves here and there. For the most part, they look really good. So I haven't sprayed these plants with anything, and last fall when I grew 2 of these 3 varieties we have planted now, I didn't spray those either from what I can remember. What I remember is just having a ton of wasps and bees all over those plants, and my presumption was that they were eating all the bad guys, kind of doing the work for us. So I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope that happens again this year. I'm not opposed to spraying them if things get really bad, but I'm gonna let them roll for now and hope those wasps come in handy down the road. Now the weed pressure in these cowpeas doesn't look that bad right now, but just a week ago it was pretty awful, because when we planted these and about a week or two after we planted them, we were getting rain every afternoon, which made the weeds just explode. But since I wheel hoed between these rows last week around this time, we haven't had much rain. Those weeds all died off and it's looking really good again. I thought I was going to have a pretty big problem on my hand, and I've learned to never complain about rain, but it has been nice to get a little bit of a break on the rain so we can catch up on the weeds a little bit. Now you will notice that these cowpeas are planted very, very thick. We've got double rows for this Chack Bay variety. Did them like that last year and they did great, so we went that route again. Got single rows for those climbing varieties. We'll address that in a minute. But if you take a look in there, we've got pea plants planted every inch or two along that row. I planted these by hand, so it wasn't super precise. We just kind of scattered them along our little furrow there. And I'm not going to thin these. I always plant them this thick. Some years I've tried thinning them. I couldn't tell that there was any advantage to thinning them. It was just some extra work we had to do. These things can be planted really, really thick and they'll still perform and give you plenty of peas, so we're going to let them roll just like they are. Now those two single rows, the Ozark Razorback Cowpea and the Tennessee Purple Pea, are climbing varieties, so we're going to give them something to climb on. But do you have to trellis those? Absolutely not. You do not have to trellis them. We could easily let these peas just vine out and crawl over these bare spaces between the rows right here, and we would still get some really nice production from each variety. However, much like when we talked about the cucumbers on the last video, growing them vertically on a trellis is going to allow us to keep things a lot cleaner, keep our weeds a lot more manageable in that plot, and also going to make these peas a lot easier to pick. If they're just crawling all over the ground there, we're going to be stepping all over our pea plants while we're picking, and we might not get that great of a second or third harvest. But if we're growing them vertically, we're not going to damage the plants a lot during harvesting, and we should get 2 or 3 rounds of production maybe. Now if we would have timed things a little bit better and we didn't have to deal with Debbie, we probably could have used these field corn stalks as a trellis. I've seen people do that in the past. You've got some dried field corn stalks out there, just go plant peas along where the corn is planted, let the peas climb on the corn stalks, and you really don't have to spend any money on a trellis because it's already there. Or you could use metal panels. You could have them just straight along the row, or have them bent in an arch like this so they grow all along there and you walk underneath and pick your peas. But I'm going to use this stuff right here, the Horta Nova netting. I actually had to go ahead and roll out 2 rows worth to make sure I had enough. Had 2 pieces of rolls underneath the barn there, and thankfully I've got what I need to do this today. And one of the many reasons I like that netting so much is cleanup is so much easier as opposed to using a metal panel. So when you're using a metal panel and those peas are done, you got to pull all the pea vines off that panel. With this netting here, all I got to do is clip those zip ties off our T-posts, and then I just basically grab a piece of that netting and start pulling. It pulls up my plants, everything. I just roll it up, let it sit in the yard for a few days, let some of that plant material decompose, and then throw it in the trash. Super fast and easy cleanup. Maybe not the most sustainable way to do it because we are putting plastic in the trash, but it's a lot faster and easier. Now with these climbing cowpea varieties, we could have put up our trellis when we planted these peas, but I wanted to make sure I was going to get a good stand here before I put the time into making a trellis. We could have done it a week or 2 ago after all these things germinated, as long as we do it before these plants start forming some runners. I haven't seen any runners yet on these, but it looks like they could be coming any day now, so we definitely need to get one up. So we're going to be using T-post to put up our Horta Nova trellis. Now with something heavier like cucumbers, I'll put a T-post every 10 foot, maybe even every 8 foot. But these peas aren't near as heavy as cucumbers, so I'm going to skimp a little bit and just use 3 T-posts per row, basically 1 on each end and 1 in the middle. These rows are 30 foot long. So we got our posts in the ground there as close as we could get them to that drip tape without puncturing it. So now we just need to hang our trellis netting that we've already cut to length here on those T-posts with some zip ties, stretch it out nice and tight. I'm going to put my netting right at the top of those posts there so this trellis can be as tall as possible. I know these peas are going to climb and climb and climb. If I had some 10-foot tall T-posts, they would climb to the top of that, but this is the tallest ones I've got at the moment. And there we go, got both of those nice and tight there. Only took 9 zip ties for each 30-foot row. And man, you talk about pretty, that's gonna be some kind of pretty when both of those are covered in peas. Now because these are planted so thick, we probably will have to train them in the beginning. So once those runners get, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches long enough to where I can train them without breaking them, I'll train them on the netting. Once they get on there, man, they'll shoot to the top in no time, usually in just a matter of days. But I'll have to help them out a little bit in the beginning, otherwise they'll just get tangled up amongst themselves down here, and we want them to climb on this thing that we just put up. So if you want to keep things nice and neat, use a trellis for these cowpeas. But if ground cover is your goal, you can easily take a climbing cowpea variety like Red Ripper. We've grown that one as a cover crop many times in the past. You'd probably want your rows closer than what I've got mine here. You could just scatter seeds amongst the entire plot if you want to. Have some nice ground cover, let it double as a cover crop, and then go out there and harvest some peas when you're ready. If you grow a big enough plot, might even have enough put in the freezer. So there's more than one way to skin the cowpea cat, and if you want to try some of these heirloom varieties we have planted out here, we do have the Check Bay and the Ozark Razorback peas still available on our website currently, I believe. And if you want to learn more about growing cowpeas and the double row planting technique and all that, watch this video when we planted these 3 rows behind me here. We'll go into more detail why cowpeas are such a great thing to grow this time of year. So check that out. We'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.